I need to say at the outset that when I first made this channel, part of the reason why I made this channel was to talk about Avowed. This was at a time when we all thought that Avowed would be this sort of dark, gritty, epic RPG. But my primary interest was in the world of Aora due to Pillars of Eternity. And I thought maybe Avowed is going to be the next big thing. And even if it isn't the next big thing, I really, really love this universe. And so some of my first videos on the channel were about Avowed, about the lore, about the factions, about the gods, this sort of thing. Specifically about the world of Aora, meant to serve as an introduction to this universe. And I remained optimistic up until very, very recently, when it was initially revealed that this would not be the dark, gritty RPG people thought it would be. I remained optimistic because I thought, these are people with an interest in Aora. They're interested in building a compelling world, and so it might not have the dark, gritty tone to it, but I still thought this is going to be a good game. I remained optimistic and retained this optimism up until a few days ago, when I was running defense for Avowed in light of the pronoun controversy. I remained optimistic up until about yesterday, or the day before, when I discovered that this unhinged, moronic lunatic, Matt Hansens, the art director for the game, decided to show his true colors. Up until then, I thought, okay, I don't like the stupid pronouns, but whatever. We can ignore them, and there's probably a good, solid basis to this game, despite that. And that video was made before Matt Hansens went unhinged on Blue Sky or Twitter or whatever. And I'm sure many of you know about what he said, but in a nutshell, he insulted his customers. He basically told his customers that they're stupid and he wants nothing to do with them. To say this was unprofessional is a bit of an understatement, but he went full mask off, unhinged. You can go look it up if you want. I'm not going to repeat it here. And this, more than anything else, pisses me off. I do not have the words to express my disappointment, my anger, which I'm trying to keep in check here, about what's happened. I ran defense for this idiot's game because I thought this would be a good game. It still potentially could be a good game underneath the surface of all this nonsense that's happening. But I ran defense for the game because I thought it had a solid core. And what does this moron do? He goes on Blue Sky or Twitter and tweets ideological nonsense to piss people off intentionally, and specifically to piss off the customer base. I want you to imagine something. You're working at a business. You have a customer who pays you a lot of money, but he's fat and smelly. He pays you a lot of money. Is it worth insulting him so you lose his business? Now, I know a lot of people in the United States, and specifically in California, are very progressive. They're obsessed with this ideology, and that's fine. But keep it to yourself. It's not your job to go onto public platforms like Blue Sky or Twitter and insult your customer base. Your job, Mr. Hansens, apparently, as far as I'm aware, is to be an art director for this game. Not to lecture people, not to insult them, not to lose your mind in the silly American politics of the day, and certainly not to own the chuds, as he puts it. This man, in my humble opinion, has breached the parameters of his job. Now, the only way this can be saved at this stage is for Matt Hansens to apologize publicly to his customers, for Obsidan to come out, condemn his statements, and apologize with him, because on top of this, as disappointed as I am, what I found even more disappointing was when I saw that the esteemed Josh Sawyer retweeted some of the moronic posts that this idiot had made. Now, why is this disappointing? Because I've always had a lot of respect for Josh Sawyer. I always knew he was very progressive. That's fine. But he kept it to himself, and he crafted games and worlds that had their own politics, and he stuck to the narrative of the world, which you can see in a game such as Pentiment, a game about Roman Catholicism in Bavaria in the 16th century. And he did it without injecting his particular and personal ideology into the game. He made a game within the context of a specific historical era. And so to see him retweet some of this nonsense and some of this vitriol from this guy is very disappointing, to say the least. the point where I drew the line, and I'm not alone in this, was when Matt Hansens went on this ridiculous, crazy tirade on Twitter and Blue Sky. Up until then, I thought, okay, the pronouns are stupid, I'll play the game anyway because I'm interested in Aora. And guess what? I saw a lot of comments that reflected just that, from other people. People who either thought that the pronouns were not a big deal, or that they were stupid but they could live with them, as long as the game was good. But the minute this bloody moron started tweeting these things, everything changed. Because nobody likes to be insulted. I've seen people claim that they are unsubscribing from Game Pass because of this. And even though they had pre-ordered Avowed, they are now withdrawing that pre-order and they're not buying the game at all. Now obviously this is a small sample size, but I'm sure there are many others like that. All because Matt Hansens could not remain professional. Now, I don't love his politics, but that's not really the point. It's not his job to proselytize to the rest of the world and to insult people so he can quote-unquote own the chuds. I genuinely don't enjoy talking about this sort of stuff. I would vastly prefer to talk about games, their lore, the story, the mechanics, the classes, you name it. I would. But when somebody does this, especially to a universe and a setting that is as beloved as Aora is for me, I have to speak up. Now, it's a lot easier to toe the line and be silent and never talk about this stuff, the political stuff. And ultimately, I would prefer to do that. And for the longest time, I did. But even I have my limits. I've never seen anything like this in recent times. Someone in a position of authority who directed the art for an entire game, losing his mind and insulting the customer base. And I don't think that should be tolerated. So even though talking about these issues at times comes off as too spicy, and because I don't toe the line entirely, it definitely loses me opportunities. I've contacted publishers at times, as well as indie studios to ask for review codes, to try out games, so I can give their games more publicity, and frequently I'm either ignored or I'm refused, which is fine, because ultimately this is an important issue, and it's an important issue in the gaming world. You know, if you've paid attention to my videos, how many times I've talked about the fact that injecting real-world politics into games and into your interactions with the player base, the customers, is a terrible idea, and we've seen this repeated again and again and again. Dragon Age: The Veilguard was an example of this. And if we're to believe this moron, Matt Hansens, apparently Avowed is going to be this way too. I certainly hope not. Maybe he just said that to quote-unquote own the chuds at the end of the day. I don't know. It's bad enough that you secretly, internally look down at your customers. But it's inexcusable that you give public voice to that. And it shouldn't be tolerated. I was looking forward to Avowed for years. Much more so than most people. Because of my deep connection to the world of Aora. And now I don't know what to think. Beneath all of this sludge, and beneath the idiotic statements of this moron, Matt Hansens, there still could be a good game, in theory. But many people now will not be discovering this game, because it's been dragged through the mud, because of what this guy said. People are canceling their subscriptions to Game Pass, they're canceling their pre-orders, and they're not going to even buy the game. And some people think, probably erroneously, that this game is so bad that it's not even worth pirating. And this man achieved this single-handedly. You know, he either deleted or has hidden his ridiculous tweets. But as I said, that's not enough. He needs to apologize, and so does Obsidian. They need to attempt to regain the goodwill of the customers they've lost. Now, I want to cite an example of how you do engage with your customers. Now, I'm not an action RPG guy, but I am now very interested in trying out and playing Path of Exile 2. And I've watched several interviews with the developers, and when they're asked what their approach to making a game is and why they're making the game, they always answer the following. We want to make a game that we ourselves do enjoy and would enjoy, and we want to make a game that's fun and engaging. Imagine how simple that is as a design philosophy. Contrast that design philosophy, those statements, with the insane people at Obsidian who apparently care more about politics than making good games, and you see what the problem is. And this was the same problem with Dragon Age The Veilguard. And it will repeatedly be a problem again and again and again until we get real-world politics the hell out of games. They don't belong there. The people who are subtle enough and smart enough to inject this stuff into games where it actually fits into the setting and makes sense are so few and far between that you might as well not try. Almost nobody wants to have real-world politics in their games. They want to have fun, they want to escape, and people like Matt Hansens and the director of Dragon Age The Veilguard are apparently people that not only don't care about making fun games, they want to make sure you don't have a good time when you're playing them, so they can own the chuds, as it were. This simply cannot be accepted. I'm sorry if this is somewhat political or whatever. I don't care. We all have to draw a line in the sand somewhere, and this is my line. They have potentially ruined the one game I was looking forward to the most. That's right, Avowed was the only game next year that I was looking forward to a lot. It was my number one game for next year. And now, I can no longer talk about this game positively in good conscience because of what Obsidian has done. Yes, you heard it. I'm holding all of Obsidian responsible here until they condemn what Matt Hansens has said and they apologize to the customer base. So, I'm very unlikely to be talking about Avowed anytime soon. It is extremely disappointing to me, utterly disappointing, but what can you do? Anyway, as I said, this is a bit of a rant. I don't enjoy talking about this stuff. I would vastly prefer talking about games, but this moron, Matt Hansens, has potentially ruined the one game I was looking forward to the most next year, and so I felt compelled to talk about it. In any event, thank you for tuning in. I assure you the next video will not be about this, and I appreciate your time. Take care.